Hi, everyone. Hello, and welcome to Series 3, Episode 2 of Holistics Email and More, a Q&A with. I am your moderator, Adela Sol, Senior Consultant with Holistic Email Marketing. For those who are new to the show, on every episode of Email and More, we showcase a different topic with a different panel of experts. Today, we are actually talking about A/B testing in email marketing. As you know, this is more or less your show. So what we do is we bring together a panel of experts, but this is your time. So if you've got questions for us, we're going to use those to drive the conversation. It's unscripted, unrehearsed, and so much fun. So please get all your questions ready, pop them in the Q&A box, which is this way. And feel free to use the chat for anything else, including providing feedback at the end, because we always like to know how well we've done, or maybe not so well. Okay. But before we go any further, I just want to take a moment to thank all of our wonderful sponsors. This series of Email and More is brought to you by our gold sponsors, Iterable and Engage, and our silver sponsors, RPE Origin and Actito. Thank you guys for everything that you do to make this series possible. So, one final thing. If you do want to go back and watch some of our amazing sessions from Series 1 and 2, you can find them all on our YouTube channel or on our Holistic Emails website. The link is going to be provided in the chat, so you can have a little peruse at the end and see what tickles your fancy. There's so much good content on there, so much to get stuck into. And then finally, here we go. Now, we've put together a brilliant panel today, like exceptional, to discuss A/B testing and, what we should be considering when we're doing our email campaigns. With me, as always, is best-selling author and award-winning thought leader, Kath Pei of Holistic Email Marketing. Oh, there she is. We also have Victoria Scott of Marks & Spencer. Give us a wave, Victoria. Thank you. We have Phil Hill of DoorDash. There he is. And we've got Andrea Amboya also from Holistic Email. So you've got a triple threat there. Hey, Andrea.
Hi.
Cool. So while you guys are watching in the comfort of your home, or maybe the office, or maybe a beach, or maybe a bar, whilst you're getting your questions together, I'm going to quickly ask the panelists to introduce themselves. So I think we're going to pick on Victoria. Sorry. Victoria, please tell our viewers about you, where you're from and what you do.
So I'm from Marks & Spencer's. I'm the food CRM campaign manager. So anything that you come see out of Marks & Spencer's, especially with M&S Food, sometimes a little with Sparks as well. That's kind of me and my team. We will do that.
Amazing. Okay, I really want to know who does the sexy "this is M&S food."
I can't tell you that.
Oh.
Also, the truth is, I don't actually know. So they keep that under secret.
Her voice is so iconic. It just, I think everybody has tried to mimic that voice. This isn't just any AirPods. This is Apple AirPods.
Absolutely, I know. Everybody loves it. Honestly, all my friends, every time we're together, like every time something good happens, they're like, "Oh, this isn't just this," and I'm like, I get it.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today,
Thank
Victoria.
you for having me.
Right, so next up we have Phil. So Phil, please tell our audience who you are, what you do.
Yeah, hello. Good morning to people on the west coast of the US. Good afternoon to everyone over in London and everywhere else in the world, basically. I've been in email for about 6 years or so, and I'm based in Seattle right now. I just had a transition of roles. I was just at Rover for 4.5 years, where I was doing email marketing specifically for the sitter side of Rover, and a lot of international marketing as well for 2 of those years. And now I just transitioned over to DoorDash, where I'll be doing retention marketing for DoorDash. So not much to say there yet, as we just got started yesterday.
Well, for those who don't know DoorDash is the US equivalent of, let's say, Deliveroo or Uber Eats. So it's a big deal. Right, Andrea, the girl with the beautiful top, please tell everybody who you are, what you do.
Well, I'm based in Denver now. I actually met Kath when I lived in London many years ago. I've worked in email since, I guess, like 2008. Started in theater, walked down the street, interviewed for a job at the New York Times, and that opened up like a completely new career for me. So I've worked agency side, client side. I've worked for a media publisher, obviously, with the New York Times. Kind of the pandemic jump-started a copywriting and more content planning side, as well as continuing as a consultant. So I've been in a lot of different roles, and I just keep coming back to email.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining us today. And you know what, your expertise and all of your kind of skills that you've gained along the way are definitely going to be fruitful knowledge in this panel today. So I'm quite looking forward to your little gems that you're going to drop. And last but not least, we have Kath. I'm sure everyone knows who Kath is, but for those who don't, please let us know who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm CEO of Holistic Email Marketing. We're a boutique email consultancy. And as you can see, we've got two of my wonderful, esteemed colleagues here today. We're all incredibly passionate about A/B testing. So that's why I thought, let's just get us all on at the same time. So and that's basically it. I write, I blog, I speak, I train, and I am passionate about email, and I'm looking forward to the session.
Amazing. I feel like you've just given us a beautiful slogan for a t-shirt. I write, I blog, I teach. A nice little piece of merch right there. Okay, so you guys watching at home now know who our panelists are, and I hope you're excited, just as excited as I am. So you can see beaming. We're going to get straight into it, but I put a little note in the chat. Please, 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 if you do have any questions, or if there's anything that any of the panelists say today and you feel like, I want to dig a little bit into what that person just said, feel free to leave a message. Feel free, we'll pick it up and we'll get the panelists to answer. So we're going to jump in with something quite simple, just to set the time. Why is A/B testing so important? And I'm going to do Game of Thrones, Hunger Games style, just chuck it out there. You guys can fight for it if you want. So to you guys, why is it so important? Why is it necessary?
I think it's really important to know exactly what your customers want from that communication, just like straight off the panel. There's no point sending an email and then thinking, oh, maybe our open rates could have been a bit better for that, or our click-through rates might have been a bit higher if we'd done this. No, right from the beginning, like what people want.
Amazing. Yeah. I agree.
The way I look at, backing on to what Victoria just said then, the way I look at it is, it's like every time you're doing a test, you are actually asking your audience, you're giving them a survey. And so therefore, and they're actually, but instead of a survey, so, when you do a survey, you generally, it's a mindful response. It's coming from here and you think about it and this is it. And yes, tick here, or you verbally say it, or this one is actually coming with your actions. So unlike when you are answering a survey or something, when you're doing that mindful response, you can sometimes answer it based upon the person that you like to think that you are, whereas the actual person that you really are. But the clicks, within the email actually reveal who you really are. So it's actually more truthful than a survey. So I love to see that. And I love that your response was that way, because we marketers tend to make it all about us, don't we? And our results.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's all about the consumer. It's all about what it is that they want.
Absolutely. Yeah, you take out the subjective, don't you, from different people's personalities in the team, thinking, oh, actually, our customers want this, but they want this. You just take that out completely. There's no conflict there. You just say, well, let's, trust the data. Let's see what they want.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you. I like the way you tied in like the actions, like that phrase, like actions speak louder than words from a survey. I think it's so true there. And like if you're A/B testing, you're always going to know after the test, like that you learned something, that you're more sure when you're telling like your higher ups, whoever you need to report to, that your answer that you have here, why you're doing something, it's backed up by some kind of data after your test.
Yeah.
And also,
I love that.
I was going to say, like, we always, it doesn't matter what you're doing, but if you're creating a piece of content or you're creating a series of campaigns, you have an assumption. And it might just be how you would like to be spoken to or how you would purchase a product, but that's not going to apply to everyone. So it's also a way of, it's actually when you get test results that differ from what you assumed the results would be, that's actually some of the most interesting material to work with.
That's it, because we bring our own subjectiveness, our own biases, our own preferences to the table, and that's often where we start. We will start to create the hypothesis based on that, and then look at someone else's preference, and then put that in together with the hypothesis. So it's a good place to start, but as you were saying, Andrea, that's not where you want to stay or finish or anything like that. That's where you want to start.
You guys are giving some very juicy answers, and I really, really like it. Hey, Skip just jumped in. For those that don't know, Skip is our other moderator and host for Email and More, and he's just come in to have a little nose and see that I don't crash and burn today. Oh, thanks. He was clapping for me earlier, so he said, but we didn't see emojis, did we? So he could be lying. Thanks, Skip. Right. Okay. This is a juicy question, actually. So, as email marketers, we generally learn how to conduct A/B tests on the job, which I think is literally everything when it comes to email marketing, to be fair. Do you think the industry could do more to help with education or marketers on the art of A/B testing and conducting experiments? So, like, guys, what has been your experience? We are going to get into the nitty-gritty, guys, just watch it, but we're kind of warming up into things. So what's your experience been with A/B testing and kind of understanding how to conduct those tests? Go on, Phil.
I've got some thoughts, but I want to hear you guys first.
Yeah, I was thinking in my head, because like when you were saying like we don't do enough preparing people for email in general and email marketing and stuff, it just like rung a quote in my head from a professor that I had in college that was like, email will always be around, email marketing will always be a thing. And I was like, oh no, I'm not going into email marketing, I'm gonna do something cool. Years later in email marketing and think it's really cool. So yeah, that's what I was thinking when you said that.
I think the worst is when you do like an A/B test and you're like, oh my god, you get really excited about it, and people are like,
exactly. Especially when it's like what I thought was gonna happen.
I think the thing for me is that I love A/B testing. Like I said earlier, it's learning exactly what the customers want. At the moment, though, it is a manual process, and I get why people don't do it, because it can be time consuming if you don't have like an automated system in place. So I get why people don't do it, but it's definitely so worth it.
Yeah.
I think kind of the statistical significance part and communicating that to your client is really tricky, because oftentimes, you do a test one time and if you're lucky and you get statistically significant results. I've had clients that are like, great, now we're going to change all of our emails because of that. I'm like, no. We need to test at least 3 times. We should be testing maybe different times of the year. This is just, it's just the tip of the iceberg. So that's tricky. Trying to explain that it's not a one and done, it's really an ongoing process.
Yeah, there's so many variables that go on, like outside of like what your one little test was. Because I know for like me, like when we're testing things, it could go totally different if it was like in summer versus like our slow period in winter, or like our peak season, like just before like holidays and stuff like that, and people will react really different because they're engaged at different levels.
Yeah.
So you have to take that into consideration too.
Very true. But it seems as though most of you are quite comfortable and have been since the start of your careers with A/B testing. I know that.
Whoa.
Okay, there we go. Because
I don't want to have that title yet. I was like, I had a lot of help from like.
For me, A/B testing was a conundrum. I didn't really understand the proper parameters, didn't understand how much of my group I was supposed to take. Was it a straight 50-50? Did I have to jumble it up a little bit? Were there any remixes that I needed to apply? Where would I go for information? There were a few places, and I know Kath back in her previous times, she used to teach on e-consultancy, but those resources weren't relatively widely known to young budding CRM managers or those that were entering the world of email marketing. So I think that's what the question was trying to allude to kind of let everybody who's watching kind of understand that it isn't a common knowledge area. What would you say?
I think at time, isn't it, like when like your first time doing it, and then they're talking about, you need to split your data out, then you need to send it, and nobody's like, oh, split my data out? Oh no, I've only just learned how to send an email. Now you're asking me to what?
Yeah.
I remember my boss said, she was like, I think we should do this thing called A/B testing. So if you could just do that, like she was just do that. I was like,
wait, so she didn't know?
just pull it out of your hat, just do it.
Right, sure. And it was something that we both then had to work through together, and it was a bit, it was a great learning curve. But the time you're just like, completely agree. There's it's not readily known, or there's nothing like readily available, I don't think.
And what I found with a lot of our clients and my students even as well, a lot of them have actually been taught how to test wrongly. And the reason for being is there's not that many resources out there telling you how to test. So testing for email is slightly different than testing for, say, a landing page. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to, a landing page, you leave it for time, right? And until you get statistical significance. Whereas we're talking about identifying the sample size that you're going to be using and doing all of your, pre-calculations and then do after calculations to see if it's statistically significant and so on.
Yeah.
So it's different. And there's just not that many resources on this. And then when you go and have a look at most of the ESPs now, the more recent ESPs that have been developed in, say, the last 5 years, they've understood that this was an issue, and they've actually built into the system a better A/B testing procedure, better A/B split testing tools, everything like this. But the older ones are still quite archaic, quite limited, and none of them ever talk about having a hypothesis. None of them, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, this is where I think, like with what you were saying, Andrea, is that you can get a result and everyone goes, yay, but then actually you have to manually go and calculate the statistical significance of it to actually identify, is it actually a valid one? And that's where most people end up finding out that they don't know what to do. And there's a lot of disillusionment happening as well, because they get disillusioned because maybe they haven't got a winner. And the reason why they haven't got a winner is because they tested this and they tested this, and they're so similar that there's no way you could get statistical significance between them, because you didn't have a hypothesis to test this against this. Right. So some really basic things like that really, could benefit the industry a lot, I think.
Yeah, it's like the way I got better at testing was leaning on the analysts that I had around me and stealing some of their time. We have like data office hours and stuff like that. So I go and talk to them when I'm setting up a test and learn from them, kind of like teach me how to fish, rather than just like giving me the fish and whatnot. So I was like more self-reliant in the future. And so I was like, I was not the best at statistics when I was in college and coming out to do email marketing. And so I was like, I got to lean on some experts here and then get better at it and do what Kath was saying, and like actually choose things that are actually here and here to actually see some kind of difference, like you were talking about, and learning what stat sig was in the first place to determine, cool, we've got a winner, and going from there. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, this is some really good stuff. Okay, so we're going to go, I think what Kath and Phil have more or less kind of alluded to, which drags us quite nicely into our next question, which is, how do you actually conduct a correct test? What are the parameters that you should be looking at in order to ensure that A, you reach a statistical significant result, and B, that you're looking at the right metrics, or you're analyzing the right, components to ensure that you do have a successful test. So what are your methods when you're conducting a test? How do you go about it? What can you give our viewers today? Little gems. The gem emoji. Let me find one. No, I'll just do the surprise gems.
Ooh, fun.
Well, I'll kick off. I won't say all of them, but I'll kick off with the one that I just referred to, which was a hypothesis.
Right.
And the reason why this is so important is it basically steers the whole test. And how you come up with the hypothesis is identifying either a question you want to find out, what does my audience like, this or this? Identifying that you've actually got a challenge that you need to resolve, right? And then so you could be testing a hypothesis to see if that's going to help to resolve that issue. Delving into the data, just have brainstorming sessions. For me, the hypothesis list is ever growing, right? And that's because you're always wanting to find out more about your audience. You're always wanting to find out more about them. And note that I brought it back to the audience again, because this again is where you want to be starting. So there's a lot of tests that are done which are just sort of talking about factors, red button versus a green button. And yeah, that is kind of testing the audience and the audience reaction to color. But I think there's a lot more meaningful tests that you can be implementing, which will give you a lot better results than those kind of micro tests that, therefore, once you've found all the big things and you want to keep testing, then you could be doing something like that. But I don't think that they're going to give you huge, meaningful, results. So for me, the starting point is identify what it is that you want to find out, and then go and create the hypothesis and start from there. Because the other thing too is, you always hear people say you can only test one for the A/B split test, not a multivariate test, but A/B split test. You can only test one element at a time. Now, that is very true if you're not using a hypothesis. Because if you start to test multiple, so say you go, okay, well, let's see, if we put the first name in the subject line versus not in the subject line, then we do a red button versus a green button, then you now have moved away from a A/B split test to have a multivariate test. However, if you say, I want to test benefits over savings, right? So you can test the subject line, you can test the first paragraph, you can test the imagery that goes and supports that, you can test the landing page, the call to action. So you can test multiple factors or elements within that campaign because they're supporting that hypothesis. So don't feel limited to doing that. As long as you have that hypothesis, you'll be okay. And that will actually give you a more robust result, because you're testing multiple elements. So it'll be a definite benefits oriented, email versus a savings oriented email and landing page accordingly. But yeah, so
amazing. See the hearts there, Kath?
Oh, hearts all over the place.
There you go. That's for you. No, amazing. And I think this is the thing. And it kind of, I want to take it back to the past, but it does kind of allude to the fact that there wasn't enough literature on how to conduct a proper test and the way in which you need to go about it. Because yes, the literature that's out there is very focused towards web testing, and it's very multivariate centric. And what Kath is explaining in terms of using the hypothesis is email's own way of looking at multivariate testing, but guided under a hypothesis. And I think another really good parameter to ensure, to make sure that you have testing success is making sure you're looking at the right metrics. So just like Kath had said, you may be looking at those motivations, whether it's benefits versus savings led. You're changing the subject line, and perhaps you're pulling in some offers or incentives within the campaign itself. But most people would look at opens or clicks as the determining winner, when actually the whole point of that email most predominantly is to drive those sales, which is why you're testing those different those tones, right? So conversion should actually be the metric or the parameter that you're focusing on to see, of those different streams that we've looked at, what was the actual conversion? Because you might have a really low open on one, but then the AOV or the conversion is through the roof, right? So you have to also understand and realize where your success metrics lie. So are there any other nuggets that you guys feel like, actually, yes, when I've been conducting my test? Oh, Andrea, I'm not going to finish my sentence. Go ahead. Jump in.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, I actually, there's a test that's like stayed with me over several years because of kind of what you're saying for a number, but it's a little bit layered. So I was working with a quilting company. So they make these metal, it's a machine where you can like cut out the pieces for quilting. That's their product, just to give you some background. The company was very promotional driven. They were talking about seasonality, and I was working with an agency at the time, not holistic, and we took a really different approach to all the copy in our email that was very much around like this, very emotional, like this gives you the chance to do more of what you love, like to get to the design part or the sewing part or giving the quilt to somebody, whatever that is. And it was really interesting because we had really phenomenal test results with this approach. Big jump in opens and big jump in clicks. However, the client, the way that they calculated conversion rate was sales divided by web sessions.
Yes.
And so as a result, we drove a lot more traffic, but then their conversion rate actually went down.
Yeah.
So you also have to really understand kind of step by step, like, is there a potential roadblock? Like, we didn't have any control over the landing page. We could only control the emails. But like the team I was working with, like, this is so great. Like, we have these big, huge, jumps that we can talk to the client. The client's like, look at our conversion rate. It went down, and we were trying to explain it, and it was so frustrating because we were so excited, but we had to figure out how to essentially be a little bit of a salesperson to the client about what we were seeing and why it was exciting, because to them it was like, this was a failure when you looked at the conversion rate.
Yeah, I can relate to that, because what I was going to say was control what you can control, essentially, with your tests, and be careful like what metrics you're looking at and like what an email can actually drive versus like something that's like 2-3 steps down the road that has like multiple variables and follow-up points that you can't control past the email, to make sure that you are like sharing that success with your client, for example. And we can all celebrate that win rather than looking down the road and it's like doesn't seem as much of a win, because I know I've fallen into that in the past of like trying to say like, okay, cool, we're gonna get all these sitters to get 10 bookings. And I was like, I can't really do that. I have to get them to take certain actions that will lead to them having bookings, like updating their calendar or opening this email. And those are all the behaviors that I want them to have that add up to like good behaving sitter that has 10 bookings most likely. So I'm trying to create them with actions from the email.
And that ends up being then that your success metric should simply map back to the objective of the email. That's what it should. So if your main objective is to drive them to the landing page and trust that the landing page is going to do it, or another 2 steps. So you're driving them to the landing page, so the landing page can then encourage them to complete this form, and so on, right? So that's your objective, is to drive them to the landing page. If you're e-commerce, you might be wanting to drive them to the landing page to actually buy the product that they've just been looking at in the email, right? So it depends on what your objective is, and that therefore should be your success metric. But as is often the way, that means if you're going to be going beyond, so if you are going to be doing some form of conversion as being the success metric, then that tends to be a manual process when you're actually doing your, your A/B split test, which means that you can't use the automated tool, which is a nice, 10% get version A, 10% get version B, and then 80% will get the winner, right? You won't be able to do that. You'd have to do, say, a 50-50%, 50-50 split test, run it, then review the results, looking at the conversions after the test has resolved, has finished, which you'd have to give it a few days depending on what the product is and everything. And then you go, okay, then you announce the winner, right? So all of these things need to be taken into consideration, and the metric needs to be identified upfront. You can't decide that on the last minute, because it will affect how you actually run the test.
No, perfect, guys. This have been some really good gems. Wish we had a gem emoji now. Gems for people to think about. So setting a hypothesis, making sure that they're testing based on their objectives, and also ensuring that thank you, whoever did that, and ensuring that they look at the parameters that they can control. So ensuring that whatever the success metrics is, it's based on the elements that they can control. So like Phil said, landing pages, everything to do with the platform, the website itself, maybe be beyond our control. So what are the steps that we want our subscribers, customers, prospects to take, and what does that look like in regards to our objectives? So really, really good there. We actually got a question, yay, from Kirsty. So Kirsty Walsh, she asks, or they ask, are there some things that you test short and long term, i.e. quick wins after 3 tests and longer term impact? It's a really, really, really good question. And I wonder if there's anyone that would like to give some insights as to what they've done and tested short term and long term.
Yeah, so I can
like Victoria, there we
go. I can, yes. So Marks and Spencer's, obviously, we send emails every day. And that's across, food, clothing, and home, bank, and the rest. So you can't always have that luxury of, taking a test, waiting 3 days to finalize all the results, and then running with it. So ours are always pretty much very quick time. So we normally send the email out. So if we're doing subject lines, normally anything larger than that, obviously we do a longer scale. So things like email content or design of an email, obviously that runs over a longer period of time. But things like subject lines, especially for a big campaign. So for something like Mother's Day, for instance, we always have like our Mother's Day family dine-in, and we always want to know if we put Mother's Day in there versus if we put Mother's Day in subject line versus not putting Mother's Day in, like how do customers react to it? So things like that are always very quick. So we do it in the morning, and then we only really tend to leave it like 6 hours, maybe 5 to 6 hours before then we look at the results, like, yep, that one's won. Majority of the time they don't change that much. Sometimes they do, unfortunately, but it's just the way the world works. So sometimes, we have to just make those decisions. They are really quick wins, just like that, or like one specific campaign. If you're looking at a campaign in general, the one that you continuously run repeatedly, then yes, obviously we stretch that over a longer period of time. But some of them we just don't have that luxury of doing. So it's always very quick.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's quite similar. In our experience, we've definitely short term are things such as minor design changes, or even testing certain images, or even time of day or day of send, as well as the usual subject line. So those would be your your quick wins. I'm keen to understand what anybody has tested in terms of like longer term, gains. Oh, Kath, go ahead.
So personalization, say recommendations, AI engines, things like that. So you can be testing them on the immediate because that will give you either an uplift or not an uplift, right? It will give you an immediate response. But personalization itself, also, if you think about it, what the objective of personalization, and our next one is on personalization, the next email and more. The objective of personalization is actually to enhance the customer experience. So when you're talking about customer experience, you're not just talking about short term. You are talking about short term, but you're not just talking about short term. You're also talking about long term. And so now you're talking about customer retention. Now you're talking about customer lifetime value. So therefore, what you want to be doing is measuring the customer lifetime value over a longer period as well. Now, that kind of thing can only be done, though, if you're using, if you've actually put them into those groups, those that get personalized content, those that don't. So you've got that control group happening, and then you're measuring the customer lifetime value over time. So that's one way that you can do it.
What about automations, guys? Would you consider that as one of the long-term tests as well?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
With
only to get to a volume where you can start really digging into the data, but also also the way we tend to look at automated programs. I mean, usually you look at them over a month's time. You bucket them into, say, monthly performance. So you just make it align with how you already do your reporting as well for just sanity.
Does anyone have any insights on how they usually test their automated programs that they can share with our viewers?
Yeah, I was like thinking of like the automated programs or triggers, whatever you want to call them, and thinking about like those specific life cycle points for your customers that you look at. Usually those are like smaller audiences because they're interacting with you, but they're like highly engaged, so you can learn a lot from them. But it's probably going to take a little bit more time to get to that statistical significance. So, for example, there was one where I was trying to understand the impact of like an email on getting people to download an app. And so it's like, cool, we'll pick out the specific life cycle point of a sitter that is responding to a message super slow. And so it took them over 4 hours to respond to a message. So we send them an email because they don't have the app, and they're like, hey, this is why you should like download the app and like respond faster. And that was a great email. I was like sent manually before. And so it had like a 50% like conversion rate. And so it was like really good stuff compared to an email where we just like send it to all the people that don't have the app downloaded at some random Tuesday and say, hey, download the app with like the same content, but they're like not as engaged. So that test isn't as successful as that one when we're like pinpointing this time where it's like, okay, cool, I get why I need the app in this situation because it'll help me be a better sitter, which helps me get more money down the road.
Yeah, so you're basing that test and that automation on an event, so it's also relevant as well. So it kind of ties into the personalization that Kath was talking about, which is really cool. And I think most of us are probably doing some form of test and not actually realizing that we are doing those tests. And one thing that we do like to talk about at Holistic when it comes to testing, especially with automations, and I think Kath will agree and probably will add some sprinkles on top of this as well, is when you are doing your automations, it's always best practice to have a I thought someone was breaking in, sorry. To have a second it was the postman, but I just have a secondary stream, where you're continually testing. So it's not just one linear test. You actually can think outside the box and have a secondary stream that is testing a different variable, and you're iterating each time. So it's not just a one and done, it's an evolving test. You keep it going, you keep on adding as you learn your results, as you see statistical significance, you apply that to the next one, and then you start to divulge your test out even further. You can't even see my arms, man.
That's how far they're going.
Yeah, we definitely prefer that way because, and that's what we do with most of our clients. So we start off with the hypothesis, and then we build these 2 permanent streams, and then once the winner is announced, then we replace the loser with another stream, with different content and a different hypothesis. And some of our clients, when we've gone and conducted audits, we find that what they do is actually have, so say if they've got a five series, 5 email welcome series, then they might be testing just the second one and with a different offer or something like that. In which case they'll just have the hypothesis for that one, and then you'll have a version and a B version for that second email, and which is still a valid test. It still is good, but we believe, again, in order to be more robust and everything, just test the whole series, and it will give you amazing insights as well. And when you're testing, don't just look at that success metric, look at everything else, average order value, number of items purchased, blah blah blah, all the rest of it, because then that will give you food for thought, because you might find that's unusual, so that one won as far as highest number of conversions, but the other one actually had a higher revenue because the average order value was higher. I wonder why, right? So food for thought, new hypothesis comes up. So
I also just wanted to throw in as another metric, but looking at kind of unique clicks versus total clicks is an area that I've found to be really interesting, especially when you're doing content testing, because you may not always see a huge jump in your click-through rate, but if you have 2 radically different creatives and one has a lot more links and places to go, and you can look at your total clicks and be like, wow, look how many more we drove. That's compelling as well.
Yeah, it's a very, very good tip, Andrea. Thank you. Kirsty, I really do hope you feel as though the panelists have answered this question, because we really went in for you. So I'm hoping you feel satisfied like this within with the answers. Oh, she does. Great. So if there's anyone else that's watching and you have a burning question, you feel like, we haven't really got to the nitty gritty, please do throw it in there and I'll make sure that we get it answered for you. So whilst we're waiting for you to think of your questions, we'll just move on to the next one. This is quite an interesting one. It's probably a bit of a moan, and I'm not sure if we want to get into the moan just yet. Let's focus on measuring and then we'll moan at the end. Right, so usually, how do you guys measure and report on your A/B experiments? Even down to how do you document them? What are your tips? How do you do it within your establishment? Bill, even within DoorDash, you might have seen a glimpse or something, or within Rover, are there certain ways in which you measure and report on the tests that you've done? And are there any insights that you can share with our viewers today?
Yeah, of course. So I love some good documentation on anything. And so testing is like another area for like you and your team, like a spot that you can probably grow most likely, just because like if you can standardize the way that you and the rest of your team actually set up your tests and like report back out and like memorialize them, I think it's a huge win for you and the rest of your team. It helps you to be able to share like once you aren't there anymore. So like I'm not at Rover. All my tests are still their legacy sitting around.
Yes.
Or are they like in the same format as everyone else, so they can go back and like learn from the tests that I've done, not have to like waste time repeating tests that I've already done. Iterate on tests that I've done in the past and know like what the success was. So like one way that we set it up was like just like a simple Excel spreadsheet that like define like what the test was, have like a link to the test doc, what the hypothesis was, like what we were going for, and then like the results. Did we implement it? Did we change something along the way and grow from it essentially? And so if you can just establish that with your team, I think that documentation is going to help you and your team like grow a long way, save you time in the future, and hopefully just like be able to share with new members of the team and help you to like leave a legacy, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only thing I would add to that, because I think that's absolutely brilliant and that's what's needed. And I do love that you're there to leave that legacy. You're there. It's great as an onboarding kit as well for your replacement or whoever. Also, I would just add like a methodology. Can I say that? Document. Is it? Okay. And put that down, because then again they can use that, read into that, and then understand how you've performed it, why you've done it, that kind of thing. So it gives them context into it as well. They don't have to go, oh, I wonder if this is, that kind
How'd
of
they
thing.
set that up?
Yeah.
No, really, really good. Okay. Well, I think this is a nice way for us, now that you've talked about documentation, this is a sexy question. Where have you seen the greatest improvements when you've conducted a test, and what were the results? So you guys, you really need to spill the tea. I don't have any tea as a symbol. Water is empty. But you need to spill the tea. How did Marks and Spencer's do it? How did Rover do it? What did you do? What did you see? How did it go down? Did you get a raise? That's what we want to know.
I mean, definitely didn't get a raise. I think one of the biggest ones we've seen, and a real difference, was when we were launching a brand new concept. So M&S Food is when they started having their own identity, because obviously before we used to be just Marks and Spencer.
Yeah.
And we had this, and we always call our projects by animals. So it's called Project Rhino. No relation to anything, but it was. And they had these lovely annotations and doodles that they wanted to put all into the emails and all over the creators and stuff like that. And it was all very pretty. Logistically, in an email, it was bloody nightmare.
Yeah.
Code it and it will work, and you know what it's like. But the people that were doing this, because it's for the whole of M&S Food concept, right? All of marketing, not just email, didn't really have that experience. So it's like, right, okay, this isn't working. We need to be able to do it. And we took our suggestions back, and they said, nope, we like it. And we're like, just trust us. And they're like, no. And we're like, okay, we're going to go ahead and test. And they're like, fine, do a test. And we did the test, and what we thought would work versus what they thought would work, there was a very, very clear difference. And I think it was something ridiculous, like 20% from like an open rate point of view, and then from like a click-through rate, it was like 12%, which is quite a huge increase. Or not even an increase, just a difference.
Yeah.
Completely random split of audiences as well, so it's not like anything else was, or any offers were impacting that. It was exactly the same email, just slightly different designs. You know, it's just one of those things like, we get it was working and it is very pretty, but sometimes it doesn't work for email. What works for social and what works for, out of home does not work all the time for email. So A/B testing obviously definitely helped us with that, and just to be able to prove the data and not just go with the subjective.
That's really cool. That's cool.
It was a good moment for us anyway.
We had an example of testing reader revenue or contributions. So there was a publishing company, like a big newspaper, and they usually rely on donations, and the test was to see whether or not, so they had a hypothesis that if someone had given in the past, would they be motivated if asked? So like if they've given a one-off donation, would they be motivated if asked to donate again, without any major news happening in the world, just off the cuff, would you give again? And so the test was actually looking at a direct ask. So you gave X last time, why don't you give a higher amount, which is X, a suggested amount like £20 this time, versus a non-direct ask. So it's just, would you contribute towards the paper and help our, writers, etc., etc. And what they found essentially was that having a direct ask So they had obviously cut the data to look at people who had a propensity to give again, the recency of which their last donation was. So once overlaying all of those different data points, we're able to establish that actually when you tell people a number to give, they actually will abide by the number and contribute. And that was done by a split testing. So do we directly ask versus just kind of being very British about it and not asking whatsoever, but just nodding to the fact that we want more money. So that was a very interesting split test. And it's obviously led the business to now start, sewing in these direct asks, incrementally during different times of the year, which is quite very interesting. So if any of you guys are watching and you're in a similar vein, that could be something that you may want to look into in terms of testing and testing those motivations. Again, like Kath was saying in the beginning, is looking at something whether it's benefit led versus savings led, or if we use an emotional tactic versus a direct tactic, what are the possible outcomes?
And that's a great example of how you can use behavioral science and how you can be testing the different cognitive biases and everything within the email programs. So they're testing the commitment and consistency principle altogether, right? So that's what that is. You've given us a little bit more, a little donation. We want to see, we can ask for a little bit more, and then you've got the directness. And again, this is what I'm always talking about with email marketing. And this is true of the web, it's just people like you, the marketer, to be the director. They want you to hold their hand and guide them. So you made that decision easy for them because you basically said, how about you give that much? Oh, okay, yeah, that's easy. So I don't have to make a decision. I can just click a button, right?
Yeah.
So it's helpful, isn't it? So so it's that was a great test.
We've actually got some questions coming in, so I hope you guys don't mind that we're going to quickly move over to Caitlin. Don't have my glasses, I have to lean all the way in. Caitlin asks, how long should you run an A/B test before deciding on a winning email? And I think this is a question that comes up quite often. Some people test maybe twice, some stretch it out. So what would you guys, as the expert panelists, how long should Caitlin wait? Oh, TBD? No one wants to give them the right.
No, I'm going to say that it depends on how you're running the test. So are you doing an automated test? Are you doing that 10%, 10%, 80% winner, right? Are you doing a 50% test? What metric are you testing? So you can't be, if you're testing conversions and you do it within 2 hours, you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? And then you've also got to understand, if you're going to be basing it more on top of funnel metrics such as opens and clicks, delve into your data first of all and actually identify, because we've done some analysis, and I know that Andrea and I both used to work at Alchemy Works, and Della from Alchemy Works had done some analysis as well. And basically what it works out to be, and this is within the client range that we had there at that time, those that open aren't always the people who end up buying. They're your fans. They're the ones who like to see what you've got, but they're not necessarily going to action the email. Those that click will probably do it later, but they'll do it at a time that suits them because they want to ponder, they want to look. So therefore, if you were basing it only on, okay, well, we know that we get the majority of opens after 2 hours, so we're going to choose the winner, after 2 hours, then you might be shooting yourself in the foot. So it's not a thing that I can just come up with and just say this is what you need to do, because it will depend and be different per test as such. Per
Very
audience
answer.
But you can say with like bulk mailing tests, if you're splitting one of your marketing emails at least 3 times, because 3 is the smallest number where you can establish a pattern, which Kath has said a couple times on calls I've been on with her.
Nobody wants to get a message on LinkedIn saying, you told me this, I did it, and it was no, but we've always had that 3 minimum, 3 tasks, at least you'll be able to see a slight trend. But I always like to advise people to at least go 5 to 7 times at least. So you really can start to see determined patterns. You can see those trends forming, and it helps you make a really juicy, informed decision, because things can change, especially within the email environment. You don't know if it's a really great day, a slow day. So you need time to build up that data, but you don't have to stretch it out for too long. Right? You don't have to exhaust it. I think anything over 7, even to 10 days is actually enough for me per se. And if you do try it and you want to come for me in LinkedIn, so it's okay. I'm ready to say sorry. So yeah,
One
so
thing.
Kate, oh, go on. Yep, Phil.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say one thing I'll add is like if you're unsure of like the whole like statistical significance thing, there's like stat sig calculators out there.
Yeah.
If you just like throw your specific metric that you're looking into and do like the total audience that like you got to, and just like put those numbers in for both of the A and B tests, and it'll tell you if you're done or not.
Yeah. And just added to that, because that's great. It takes all the complication and the mathematics out of it. You can just use that because these clever people have gone and done it for you, right? But added to that too, we've been talking A-B split tests, but you can have A-B-N split tests, which basically means you can have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so on and so on. But of course, you need to understand. Sorry, there's a weird sound. What is that? Oh. Someone's reversing outside your window. Okay. So basically what that means that the more variations you have or variants you have within your test, basically the bigger the sample size has to be in order to be statistically significant. So you can read a fantastic article, and there's some great ones out there who are saying do 10 tests, for you to get the best result, for you to get the most significant results and everything. But you have to have the database size in the first place to be able to do that. And that means the sample size needs to be right. Particularly keeping in mind then, if you're going to be doing it based on opens, which by the way, I don't recommend, but opens, then, you've got there, it's a funnel, opens, clicks, and then conversions, right? So it kind of gets smaller and smaller. So when you're doing a ABN test or A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H test, and you're doing on open rates, you generally, depending on the size of the database, you might get away with it, but it's harder as you're getting smaller, unless you've got a multi-million, size database to be testing on. So just to throw that one in there too.
Love it. So she's giving us a brain teaser, ABN. And I think there is an article on split testing that we can definitely circulate in our Holistic Insights newsletter. If you're not signed up to the newsletter, then I really don't know what you're doing, because you're missing some gems. So yes, I think we're out of time, guys.
Oh my.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you the elevator question, but I don't know if you can do it in a minute.
No.
Speed round?
Okay, speed round. Right. You're on an elevator or lift for us, and you have one floor to impart your most important, Lily gets it, your most important tip for A/B testing in email. What is it? Victoria, since Lily's your like...
Oh no, no, she's distracting me. Phil goes first. She's distracting me.
Phil.
I mean, I said mine earlier. It was document what you test and memorialize in a standard way for your team.
Okay. Andrea.
Start with testing something big, like 2 different versions, and start on a marketing campaign that's not during your biggest sale of the year.
Yeah.
That's a nice one. Yeah.
That's a good one. I don't know if I could top that. No,
yeah, don't jeopardize your biggest sale.
That's a good one. No, to be fair, mine was just going to be repeating kind of what we've said, like know what you want to do first of all, and then do it. Just like take subjective out of everything. Trust the data.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes. And Kath, any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, mine's just repeating what we've already said too, as the hypothesis, and make sure that you're using the correct success metric. That's all.
Amazing. Okay. Well, I think that kind of sums it all up. My screen is whirring away. It's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So, Tech, can you please save the day? If possible.
Yeah. Jonathan, you got the slides?
Ooh.
Maybe we could just ask everyone to actually give feedback in the chat before you go. That would be totally awesome.
Yes, please. If you can let us know your thoughts. And so I think, can you guys see that clearly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, we just want to give a really big thanks. Sorry, my screen is very dark. Want to give a very, very big thanks to everyone that has watching us. We've come to the end, but I've really enjoyed you guys hanging out with us and finding out more about A/B testing. Big thanks to our gold sponsors, Iterable and Engage, and our silver sponsors, RPE Origin and Actito. And obviously, we're going to give a big, 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 big thank you to those that joined us today. So, I don't know, is the next slide check? Yeah. Victoria, Phil, Andrea, and of course, Kath. Thank you guys for providing your valuable and invaluable insights. And most of all, I've already thanked you guys, but thank you so much for joining us today. It really does mean a lot. Kath and Skip will be back on the 28th of June with Faithful Ida of HelloFresh, Jess Evans of Tudor of Rated People, Alice Ripton of Iterable, and Andrea again of Holistic Email Marketing, talking about personalization and AI. So please sign up to that event. It's one not to be missed, especially when it's about AI and personalization. It's quite intense and very much of the topic right now. So thank you so much, everybody. And if you're over on British Summertime or GMT, have a wonderful evening. For those that are visiting us from international, have a lovely morning and afternoon. So thank you so much for spending some time with us, and we hope you have a great day. And please do leave us some feedback in the chat. Always welcomed. Bye.